Welcome today to another conversation with the Marshall Forest. I'm here with my good friend Logan Woldridge.
Hello.
How you doing today, Logan?
Good, good. Another good day. How about yourself?
Same, doing well. Glad to be here. Glad to be back recording again. So today we're going to be talking about accountability, why accountability matters, and why it's so important, especially in the early stages of health and wellness, lifestyle changes, I'll say. But specifically in this context, we're going to talk about accountability as it comes from the role of a coach or trainer. Now, accountability can also come from a family member who's in a similar path than you, but when it comes from a coach or a trainer, someone who's professionally trained to guide you in these processes, the approach can be vastly different. Family members may not always know the correct way to motivate and help through difficult times. And so, for me personally, in my journey, especially here with Logan and our coaching and training, one of my weak points coming into this was, a communication and putting out there what I'm going through, but B, accountability, allowing someone else to come into my issues and my problems and give me actionable, meaningful solutions without just leading me along the path. And that's one thing I really appreciate about my work with Logan is he's given me the building blocks and allowed me to kind of take that from there and run with it in my own terms to make it my own process. And in that context, I found amazing amounts of growth. It's a little more difficult to do it that way without someone holding your hand, so to speak. But it's definitely worth it to take these small steps, actionable changes, to really take the time over multiple sessions to work on this and to hammer down on it until it's routine. And so, Logan, I've kind of given my piece. I'd like to hear kind of from your side, the trainer side, why this is such an important factor in our training.
Well, I feel like you hit on a lot of the points that I would just say, you know, when you're looking for one, it's important to consider a couple of things. One is your communication style, right? The way that I coach to you isn't, I think, with a good trainer coach will not be the exact same as when I'm coaching someone else. If you tailor it, you should tailor it, I feel, to the individual, because in the role of a coach or trainer, you're there to do just everything you said. I'm there to support your goals, your path, which means we have to take it your way. We're here for advice and guidance. We have greater bank of knowledge, if you will. If you're credentialed with a certain amount of experience. And at this point, I think it's appropriate to say those are the things I would tell you to consider when you're looking at trainers, right? Is everything I just mentioned there. So to sum up, that's communication style, that is connection. How connected do you feel? Do you vibe with that person? Sometimes you just don't. That's okay. Three is the expertise, their knowledge bank, which I would break down into credentials, which is probably of all these the easiest to look up, and then personal experience. To me, I would rather, if I was looking for a trainer or coach, I would go for someone with a vast amount of personal experience over someone with just credentials. And that experience can come in one of two forms, either personal and or dealing with clients. It is different. For example, myself, I have a great deal of personal experience, which means I have plenty of challenges that I've overcome and found strategies and tools that work, and tried plenty that don't, but I still know what those are, as I kept a record for more than a decade. That's the value of personal experience. Client experience is important when it comes to knowing how to quickly and accurately apply it to each individual. And of course, preceding all of this is just a coach with the willingness to take it as on an individual basis rather than a set formula that you got to follow every single time. And these days, I think anybody who's properly credentialed by one of the top organizations generally we're taught to do that, take it on an individual basis rather than a set formula or all pre-made plans and this and that. That's really what you're paying for when you're going for a trainer or coach rather than just buying a pre-planned workout, is the individualization.
Absolutely. And you kind of answered my next question there, but just to kind of reiterate a little bit, especially I feel like coming from a male to male perspective, that was difficult for me at first. Some of these things that we work on and that I found coming up in my repeated habits and cycles, they're difficult to address. Some of these things are things that I've either struggled with for a long time, or I've just recently become aware of them and how they've been damaging my life for so long. And so yeah, it's a bit humbling to kind of approach it from that stance of, I don't know what I'm doing here and I need some help. But I think, especially Logan, you said personal experience. We've known each other for a long time, but I feel like you're able to really just relate to what I'm saying in a deeper way. Sometimes you even kind of clarify what I'm trying to say better than I can. And, it's really allowed me to just trust your process. I've seen the dedication and the work that you put into this. And, it really shows in the training, the quality and content of the training. I went from just in 2 months though, and I went from basically just being unintentional about everything and just struggling to get by to feeling like I actually have a handle on it. Morning routines, evening routines. I've woken up consistently before at 8 o'clock every day for those 2 months now, I think, except for one, maybe 2 days. And that I attribute to not having to struggle through this alone without talking to anybody about it. And in turn, having someone who truly understands that struggle has been immensely beneficial. I've tried doing the accountability thing with family before, and it honestly, it causes a rift in the relationship by the end. And so, yeah, I just think it's important to be open about this aspect of it, and that it is a little more difficult, but also the immense benefit that comes from it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I would just like to say what you mentioned there about it causing a rift between you and family, right? We are taught that to be careful of working with family or people you live with because someone you're in a relationship with, because if it can be very helpful, but it's got to be handled very carefully. The closer you already are with someone, you have to understand this, meaning the coaching, the professional relationship is not our friendship. In this, to the audience, I am just referring to us here, but that applies to like dealing with family and all this. And without proper training, without or just general knowledge and education about how that happens, it's hard to mitigate that. So for instance, I made it very clear to you before we started working together that once we started working together during that hour or whatever, that is when we will talk as a coach and a client. But outside of that, I might say things, but that's just a friend giving advice. In the session, that this is all about you. I am now your coach. I am, we are old friends, but this is not based on friendship. This is a professional relationship here, and maintaining that in those moments can be very hard for a lot of people. And especially, then you get into like mother son or siblings or any of those really close family relationships, and it's almost, I would argue, impossible. We will soon have episodes of me and my little sister, who is a psychotherapist. I have mentioned here before, I have issues. I don't go to her for therapy because of these things. Not that her and I have ever explicitly said this, but I assume with both of our knowledge bases, that's why, is because you don't do these things for people you're close like that with, without risking some level of relationship. So that is the difference, I just think, between a professional and like a family member. It's the similar to like, why aren't your friends just your therapist? Well, your friends have knowledge of psychology and all of this. Great. Let them kind of be that for you. But not everybody does these days. And so, yeah, that to me is a big part of the advantage of a coach is all of this proper knowledge, if you will, that if I haven't said it before, is very difficult. It's time consuming. That's where I was trying to get at. It's very time consuming to acquire this knowledge, right? So, could you get the knowledge and then apply it yourself? Yes. I assume most of you have full time jobs or at least part time jobs, maybe even 2 or 3 part time jobs, full time jobs. Where's the time to dedicate to educating yourself on this particular area of life? This
Yeah.
is what I spent basically every waking minute over the last decade outside of work doing.
And I can
Study.
vouch for that. I've seen
Yeah,
it.
so I didn't hang
Yeah.
out with friends. I didn't go out any weekend really.
Hmm.
Or I've been in my adult life. I've been to a bar like 3 times. You know, so I've dedicated a lot of time to it and allowed it to consume my life for 10 plus years so I could do this eventually. You could do the same thing. I'm not saying I'm so special, only I can do it. But do you want to? Is it worth that to you? It was to me because it
Right.
was passion. But is it to you? If not, but you still want the benefits, it's best to go with a professional who either has the time to dedicate to it or just the passion to dedicate to it.
Absolutely. And so I think this is kind of a perfect lead in, both with what we have coming out in the site soon and also kind of the family thing that we touched on is the emotional support side of the accountability and the training. And I think that's an important piece of it, is where are you getting your emotional support from? And so I'm curious what you think about, how much of that are we able to cultivate in ourselves, be our own emotional support? And also, how do you feel about kind of turning to communities and things like that? Or if you have healthy family emotional support, turning to certain members of your family for that part of things.
Well, there's a lot there, right? As far as being your own,
Mhm.
as opposed to anybody, we're not even going to specify right now, but anybody else. We all have some level of both. It's called intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And extrinsic motivation is where when you get motivation from other people. Intrinsic is how you give it to yourself. We're all somewhere on the scale here, right? I'll use myself as an example here. I am about as purely intra motivated
Intrinsic.
as
Yeah.
I've ever met anybody to be. So we're all different, you know? Some people need that extrinsic motivation
Mhm.
and the groups. Where you get it from, now that's a whole nother question. I do think no matter where you are on this scale, it can be helpful to find people that you can get some motivation from. None of us are always motivated, not even myself, as much as I just said what I did. And it means if I, for instance, before I started trusting anybody to be my extrinsic motivation, when I fell off my motivation or emotional whatever, I fell off.
Mm.
There was nobody there to be like, yo, get on your shit, man. What are you doing? What's up? Like,
Mm.
what's happening? Blah, blah, blah. And so I'd fall off until I was able to pull myself together. I have found it in the last year or so helpful to have a couple people that I can turn to, even if not for specific coaching type motivation, just as a support network. Those are different things. It is always important, and I would encourage anybody, client or not, to try and build a healthy support network. And if you can have people from every one of these groups you mentioned, friends, family, professional, then great. That means you're going to have somebody around you supporting you all the time. It should be all the easier for you to achieve goals, especially once you start implementing any kind of professional guidance. Now, I'll also say, as this relates to coaching and training in general, the the smaller your support network is, the more helpful I think a trainer or coach can be.
Mhm.
Because that is one of our many jobs. It's not just about writing the program and getting it to you. It's also about being there as support and encouragement and reminding you, this is why, especially in the beginning, I encourage 2 to 3 sessions a week. It's very important to get that encouragement and reminder that whatever challenges you're facing, they can be worked around. You can find a solution to them. You just got to be patient and work on it. Try things. Which is again why every couple of days meeting with somebody in the beginning can be helpful while you're ingraining these habits and mindsets and such. And then later on, you start to lessen the sessions. For me, I would hope anybody I work with after at least, a minimum, I would say 2 to 3 years would start working down on the amount of sessions,
Mm-hmm.
because I've taught you plenty of tools. Now you just need to touch base once in a while when things get tough, or just to get that dose of encouragement and motivation, or again, somebody a little more educated. Because if I was when you came to me, I'm still going to be later on, as long as I stay on top of the studies and, putting it into application and all of this. So, yes, that is.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I really appreciate you making that distinction of the support network as well. And, I would just encourage, as we kind of wrap up here, taking the moral implications of this off the table. Accountability, failing in a goal, having to admit that I didn't reach a goal that I said I was going to, or fulfill a task that I said I was going to add. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, or I'm broken, or I need to fix something. It might just mean I need a little bit more help to get me through where I'm at right now. Yeah, Logan, any final words, any exercises, anything you want to throw in there for us?
Not really. I suppose the only thing would be that at this point, I hope everybody is feeling somewhat encouraged to go out there and find at least one person to be in your sport now.
Absolutely. And, I would also encourage, themartialforest.com, our social media pages, the Martial Forest Coaching. We have tons of, free videos on there, actionable steps, conversations. And I encourage you to dive in that. Take the free resources and utilize them for yourselves. And we wish everyone progress on their path and good health throughout your day. Thanks.